God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God?
I stole the title for this lesson from a chapter of A.W. Toker's book, The Pursuit of God. And the idea I want to try and espouse or bring across, and hopefully challenge you with, is a soul that thirsts for God. A whole life that desires to be closer to God, that has a desire, a want to be in the presence of God regularly, often, to feel His presence daily as you live your life, to be more interconnected with Him in all the things that you do, not just to be in His presence during a worship assembly, but to live there, to stay there, to make that part of your life's goal. I think we got a lot of goals in this contemporary culture in which we live, and none of them seems to really fill the niche. Is that the right word? The scratch the itch, maybe is better. To satisfy the real need that is deep inside each of us. And this is the answer, I believe, to that. Putting God as your desire changes your direction, changes what you're about and what you do and who you are. And if my goal is to be like God, if my goal is to be with God, this is an integral part of that. But I can do whatever I want if I don't want to be like God. The problem is where I think I can do whatever I want and be like God, because those two things are contradictory. You don't get to choose to do whatever you want and be like God, because whatever you want is often contradictory with who God is. How many of you have ever been really thirsty? Really thirsty? Only one time in my life that I can remember have I ever been really thirsty. And it was my fault because I was dumb. I went running and I did the Forrest Gump thing. I was like, I'm just going to keep going. I feel good. I'm just going to keep running. And I'm just going to keep running. I'm just going to keep running. And I just kept going and kept going. And by the time I was done, I'd run 16 miles without a drink of water or anything. And I'd stopped sweating. And my mouth was like crunchy, like there was no water left. And I don't know how I didn't manage to have some heat stroke or pass out, because it was Texas and it was probably 85 degrees, but it was dry heat, so that helps. I don't know. Anyway, that I remember thinking, this is strange. The way I feel is odd. I've never felt this like where I'm just dry. Everything is just crunchy. Just felt crunchy. But I don't even remember feeling this intense desire for water. I've never actually felt that, like, I am going to die unless I get some water. How many of you have actually felt that? Because I don't even think I had that. I don't know why. Is there anything... Oh, here, let me put this on here. What is the only thing you're thinking about? Like, man, I hope I get home for the football game. I hope hope my Amazon package shows up today. This was before the days of Amazon when I was doing that. There's only one thing you're thinking about when you're that thirsty, when you have a need that is that intense. There's nothing else that really comes into your mind. You're just like, I need to get some water somehow, some way. The only other time where I felt this thirsty, Ozzy and I climbed Harney Peak from the Mount Rushmore trailhead, and didn't take any water or anything, because that's my MO. I don't prepare, please. So we get to the top, and they're like fainting, and I was drinking water out of the little crevices in the top of not Mount Rushmore, Harney Peak. There's these little rock crevices, up there, and I was like, ooh, how delicious. Didn't get scabies or anything like that. Came away okay. But this is the only thing you're thinking about. Now, there's a reason the psalmist used this. This isn't David. This is one of the sons of Korah, and we don't know a whole lot about these people. but evidently they were part of the psalm writing community. And from the little bit of Bible history that I have read, Korah had this rebellion against Moses and Aaron back in the day, and his sons did not partake. And Korah and his rebellious friends were killed. The sons of Korah, maybe evidently because of that interaction, decided to write psalms and be more thankful to God. I don't know. This is one of those psalms. As the deer pants for the water brook, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears have been my food day and night, while they say to me all day long, where is your God? The idea, I think, is this person who is missing something in life, who's suffering, who's in need, and he's being mocked. And this is reminiscent, you can think of Jesus at the cross, where they're like, oh, well, you're the Son of God, why don't you bring yourself down? Why don't you go ahead and save yourself? If you are Mr. Magically Son of God, where's your God? Why doesn't he come to your aid? David writes a lot of psalms like this. How long, O Lord, will my enemies prosper? How long do I have to wait for your deliverance? How long before you come to my aid? Some of the psalms that we read actually would seem kind of sacrilegious to us today. We're like, how could you say that of God? How could you challenge God by asking such a question? The psalmist here is in need. As the deer pants for the water brook, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God. What is it that causes these type of feelings? What else might give this singular focus where that's the only thing that I want, the only thing that I'm thinking about? My only thought really is suffering. Because when you struggle and when you suffer, it tends to just push everything else out of the way. The people in Ukraine are probably not Black Friday shopping this weekend. Just a guess. I don't think so. They were last year at this time. Not anymore. Why not? There's something that's more pressing. Something is more important right now, and it's life. Survival. Helping your neighbor survive. I've heard several different people in different situations. I was at a China Express, that's incredibly random, in Sioux Falls. And the woman working behind the counter was from early 90s European conflict. Bosnia. Kosovo and Bosnia. You guys remember this? Some of you? I vaguely do. I was a young person at the time. And she said, I grew up in this war-torn country, and a lot of the people that lived through it still talk about saying, don't you miss those times? Where the only thing that mattered was being together and surviving, and we didn't have all these other peripheral things taking our focus and putting their claws into us and making us care about those things. I listened to Francis Chan talk about this was in 2014, 2015. There was a group of Korean missionaries that went to Afghanistan and got captured by the Taliban, and they were being beheaded systematically on television. And then they stopped. They killed half of them and let the rest of them go for some reason. And he said, talking to one of those people afterwards, the guy said that they would get together and they would say, wow, don't you miss it when we were in prison with the Taliban? And no one with any measure of common sense would say, yes, I did miss that. But the people that were there said, yes, I missed that because I was so incredibly close to God when I knew that tomorrow my head was going to be removed from my body. Like they said, I tried to get that back. I tried to get that closeness back that we had in that prison. But I've never been able to replicate that. Because there's something about this incredible, intense need that just removes everything else. It just pulls it out of the way to say, this is the only thing that matters. I think suffering does that. But I don't really think you can replicate it some other way. And the question is, if suffering is the only way, if thirst is the only thing, how do I get thirsty? Any of you fans of Rocky? If you watch the Rocky series, which you should if you haven't, in the third movie, Rocky fights who? Clubber Lang. Mr. T? Okay, come on. Anyway, he loses immediately in 3 rounds, and his trainer dies. And then Apollo Creed says, you hadn't been hungry since you won that belt. Won the belt, excuse me. And you have to get back the eye of the tiger. You remember that? That's where the song comes from, the eye of the tiger, because you weren't hungry. The idea is, when things are good, when you're on top, when everything goes well, there's no reason for you to feel this desire that drives you. And he lost that because, he was a champion and he fought these, basically cherry-picked opponents. Sometimes when life is easy, it's really easy. It's just easy to go with the flow, to keep living life, to not focusing on anything. And sometimes it takes suffering to get an intent focus back. It says, I missed that time, when I was in peril for my life, because it really taught me what was important. It really made me focus on what mattered. And I didn't have to worry about wanting all these other things and being enticed by all these sins, because all I really wanted was God and life. That brings me back to Psalm 42. Why does the gospel seem to appeal to people that are hurting? Any idea? This is a picture of a church in Africa. Look at their lovely church building. It looks like a black locust tree to me. I'm not a tree expert, but looking at the leaves, kind of what it looks like. Maybe it's something else. Maybe somebody knows better.
It's their hope.
What?
It's their hope.
Yeah. It's really all they have to hope in. Read Psalm 42 again. As the deer pants for the water brook, so my soul pants for you, O God. I want you to pay attention to what is panting. It's not my mind. It's not logic. It's not, I know it's the right thing to do, so I do this. It's not duty. It's not obligation. It's not because it's this right time and this right place with these people that I'm supposed to do this thing. My soul pants for you. There's something that we miss here because we don't really understand what the soul is and what that means. And I hopefully I'm going to be able to explain this in a understandable way. The soul in the Scripture is more than we have been taught that it is. This is a picture of a ghost, okay? I don't know if you could recognize that. And for the most part, I think this is what people think of when they think of the soul. Like the ghost of the person that comes out when they die. That floats away somehow, and this part stays alive when the body's dead. We don't really know anything about that, but that's what we've been taught, that this part stays alive and goes to God and something or other. Where did we read that in the Bible? Where does that come from? Somebody give me a verse where the Bible talks about that at all. Because I've never actually seen that, but we've just heard something like that, and we just all thought, well, that makes sense enough, I guess. You know what the word in the Bible is for the soul? There's 2 words, actually, several, in their conjugations, if you like that word. I was putting a picture behind the slide, and Cassie's like, why is there gibberish on there? What's this gibberish? I'm like, that's not gibberish. That's Greek. Suke, I guess is how you say it. I don't know. I'm not Greek. Anybody got a better? Suke. I don't know. The breath of life. It has this connotation of breath, like the spirit. When you read in the New Testament, there's this spirit, and when we hear the word spirit, we're hearing the word breath. Okay? And this is the same type of meaning here, but it is also life. Go to this verse in Matthew chapter 16. I didn't go there. Matthew chapter 16 and verse 26. And I think this really kind of aids in understanding a little bit. Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. Whatever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul?" And the word is suke. However you see that. What will a man give in exchange for his breath of life? What good does it do to gain the whole world and stuff it into your casket? See, the idea of the soul is not just a spirit thing that is inside of people. It is the entire life given to you by God. In the beginning, we're going to get there in a second. Let's go to this Hebrew word. Nefresh. Slightly easier to say. Nefresh. Something like that. Probably said very differently. Literally, life or a living being. That's the Hebrew word for soul. Life. Why do we say there was a plane crash on the news and 400 souls were lost? Why do we say that? If we think the soul floated away and lived. How did that word creep into our vernacular without us noticing it? There's more to the soul. What I'm saying is that we really understand, because God looks at it and sees all of the life that He's given to you. And this encompasses more than just some kind of internal thing. It's all of you that is alive. Right now my body is alive. It won't always be alive. But there's some people, and I had this interesting conversation with Steve Gates the other night. He asked me if I'd ever seen these photographs. Maybe you've seen some of them. I forgot to pick a picture and stick it in here. There's these photographs of soldiers in World War I before and after the wars. Just frontal photographs. And it's like a 19-year-old kid that has aged 30 years in the span of 3 years. And Steve's observation, something that I hadn't thought of, was he's like, you could tell that their soul is gone. Just looking at the picture, you can tell that their soul is gone. I think it's her hyperbole. Okay? But there's something there that has happened in a dramatic way to change that person. And I think their life has been altered. And you can see that. You probably know somebody with PTSD, and you know that person is not the same person that they were before. There's something in their life, they're missing part of life. Part of it has been taken from them by what they've seen, experienced, and possibly done. Any of you familiar with Harry Potter? So J.K. Rowling wrote into her books this one interesting concept where the supervillain Voldemort is becoming a supervillain, and he goes to talk to a professor, and he's like, so I heard about this thing, and it's called Horcrux, and when you kill someone, you know, your soul gets split in half. And I thought, that's interesting. And then there's like, you know, that's basically all I wanted to take from Harry Potter. Is the idea, and I think it coincides with the way that we experience life. That there are things that you can do that remove life from you, and things that you can do that give life to you. Murder happens to be one of those things that steals life. Not just from the other person, but from you. I knew a guy who, his name was Andy. I met him at work when I worked at a fence company. And he was a really nice guy, but there was something wrong with him, and I didn't know what it was. I found out later that he just got out of prison, and he was in prison because he had been driving drunk and killed a family. And he just wasn't normal. Like there's something that does to you. Something happens to your life. And I don't know how to explain it. I don't even really know what I'm talking about. Honestly. But there's something that changed inside of him. There's something that changed inside of those photographs and the men that are portrayed in those photographs because of what they experienced and what life had brought them through. This idea of the soul, though, is much deeper than just some kind of floating around spirit thing. It's the breath of life. Now, I lost the clicker. Is it me? There we go. Okay. In the beginning, God, the Holy Spirit, the Trinity are all together in the creation of the world. And in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7, it says that God, from the dust of the ground, forms man with his hands. And in verse 7, it says that he breathed into him the breath of life. God made a body, but until God imparted a soul into that body, it was nothing. It was just flesh. It had no life. God breathes the soul into this man, into Adam. And now he's a living being. God has imparted him this miraculous divine thing we call life. I think this is why Christian people tend to be pro-life. Because we recognize that this is a gift of God. Something that God has imparted that I cannot touch. It's sacred and it's holy. God gives it and I'm not allowed to take it away. There's an interesting concept after Noah gets out of the ark. That, all the plants are gone. The world's going to have to regrow everything. And Noah comes out of the ark with these animals and God says, it's time for you to kill some stuff and eat it. Just don't eat the blood. Remember why? Because the life of the flesh is in the blood. And that life is sacred. I've given it. I breathed it into all of the living things. It comes from me. It belongs to me. And it's only coming back to me. You can't eat it. It's not yours to own. Something about that we've missed because we think we own our life. We think it's ours to pick up and ours to set aside. But it's not. God gave it to you. You don't own it. It still belongs to Him, even though you think you're in charge of it. You're not. It was a gift. You're a steward. You're put in charge, in control for a time of something that doesn't belong to you. This is why God expects great things of us. Because you don't own your life. He does. But what is a soul longing after God need other than God? Back to Psalm 42. As the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. What is it that my life needs to be happy? What is it that I need in my life to be fulfilled? Ask that to anybody on the street, and you'll get all kinds of answers. Probably some crazy off-the-wall stuff. Ask it on Facebook and just, just sit back and prepare to be amazed at the variety of things that people have made important in this world. But what is the soul that's longing for God? What does that life need other than God? What could possibly take the place? What could possibly fill that space? What could possibly be more needed and more significant than the true God? So we find ourselves in this peculiar situation where my soul belongs to God. And all that I need is God. But everything that I want is oftentimes contrary to God. Something's misplaced. Something needs to be reordered. Something needs to be removed and replaced with something else. This is the whole kind of message of the Bible. That from the very beginning, He breathed life into us. He made us in His image. And then we said, well, this is nice, but I'm going to throw it away, and I'm going to go this way and do my own thing. And God knew from the beginning this was going to happen, and He instituted a plan, and it involves Him becoming like us so that He could forgive us, so that He could break the bondage of sin that we put on ourselves. And then there's a calling. Come to me. Come to me. If you want to be fixed, come to me. If you want to have purpose, come to me. If you are thirsty and you need something, come to me. Remember what Jesus' words were to the woman at the well in John chapter 4? He said, if you knew who you were talking to, you would have asked me, and I would have given you living water. Drink this water, you'll be thirsty again, but the Son of Man gives living water, and he who drinks the water that I give will never thirst. We've been going to the wrong place to fulfill the need. We thought what we needed was something to drink. What we needed was scratching for our itch. But really, we were looking in the wrong place. And the whole world is looking in the wrong place. The answer's always been with God. It's always been at the foot of the cross. It's always been there. But somehow we got distracted. Somehow we misplaced our ideals. We misplaced our trust. We misplaced what was important. And went the other way. And we need to go back. Go back to the source of life. And allow our souls to thirst again after God. For the living God. And ask this question, when shall I come and appear before you? Okay, we're going to take a break. Say about a 5-minute break. Looks like we'll, about 2 o'clock, we'll have a discussion, which is our Bible class.